Good morning and welcome to another episode of AfterWords. Today is Pentecost Sunday, where we celebrate the descendants of the Holy Spirit upon the disciples. Today is May the 28th, 2023. My name is Kafense Chike, and AfterWords is the weekly discussion we have where we discuss our weekly sermon presentation in the virtual village. The sermon was presented today by Jeramogi Kamathi, our presiding bishop, and the focus of the topic of the sermon today was a right now Pentecost. And in this sermon, he discusses Pentecost in the traditional setting as it occurred 50 days after the resurrection of Jesus, the Black Messiah. And in the sermon, he gives us several examples of Pentecostal experiences in the context of a right now Pentecost, a spiritual experience that we can use to deal with our earthly battles. And we have with us today, Walimu Olatunji and Brother Nkosi Brown. Could each one of you introduce yourself, starting with Nkosi, and say a little bit about who you are?
All right, for sure. Hello, everybody. My name is Nkosi Mwanda Osaze Yazid Brown. I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, Shrine 9. I attend Howard University. I'm a rising sophomore. My major is strategic legal management communications. And yeah, it feels good to be in this space with you guys. And I'm excited to, discuss the sermon.
And I am Walimu Olatunji. I'm a minister at Shrine 9. I'm also one of a number of historians in our region, working closely with our cultural center. Glad to be here with you again.
Greetings and welcome each and everyone. I'd like to maybe start with you. I'm so elated to have a younger person in our midst today. Of course, the struggle we've been involved in is a protracted struggle, meaning it spans across generations. So it's very important that the transgenerational transformation of power and leadership is conveyed across generations. So Brother Nkosi, could you maybe share with us today what your impressions or what the takeaways were that you got from today's sermon?
Okay, so one of my takeaways that I got from the sermon was when Jeramogi spoke about the right now. And from his sermon from Easter, I recall him talking about right now, and that's kind of been his message, the now, instead of us focusing on the past. And I feel like that's really powerful because, again, like you said, the transgenerational struggle of Black people, how we can tend to be caught up in the past and not focus on the now. We have, again, since I'm younger to you guys, it's good to have me as an example for our youth to come on here, talk about, the sermon and be a part of those things that the Shrine has always been, doing, having these discussions and stuff, and kind of getting back into tradition. But we utilize we take what we've, done and incorporate it to our current day and age now. So it's crucial and it's important that we, take those Pentecostal experiences that, kind of the holy experiences and the experiences that helped us, that's molding us into who we are, and how it's important that as a Shrine, as a community, as a Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church community, how we come together and how we build each other up from those experiences. So yeah, that's one of the many takeaways that I took away from today.
Thank you for that. Walimu Olatunji.
Yeah, our current patriarch always delivers a very powerful and thoughtful message. And the one that we shared today was in that vein, reminding us of the backdrop of the Pentecost experience of a Black nation, Israel, struggling against the oppression of a white Roman society, and coming together as a group in order to address that oppression, and having a group leader who would be Jesus, and the people believing that he was the expected Messiah. He would be the one that would lead them through the oppression of the Romans, but his life ended up on the cross, and they decided to come back together in order to try to move forward. But they believed that he was the one. And as Jeramogi indicated over and over again, things might not always work out the way we expected in our personal lives and in our struggle as a people as well. But the important thing was that we have to come back together, and that experience in of itself, coming back together, can create a inspiration for right now action to continue to move forward. Very powerful message.
One thing that I'm reminded of as a younger or older young person or a younger old person, however you want to contextualize it. I did join the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church at about 20. And most of us that have this grade and different things that go along with it, we were your age, Brother Nkosi, when we joined.
Right.
And at that time, Jeramogi Abebe, our beloved founder, was able to give us a right now interpretation, renewed interpretation of Christianity based on the Pan-African Orthodox Christian Church. And what was consistent with that was right now interpretation of Pentecost. So what moved many of us was the contemporary relevance of the theology at that time. And of course, we're faced with the challenge now to be able to pass that on to young people, because as I said before, our struggle is a protracted one. And the idea of being able to have an experience when you need it at that time, not what Jeramogi Kimathi, I did, one of the many things he did that was very important and effective was to show the distinction in how the traditional Western church orientated us to look for something in the by and by, in the hereafter, that of course would enable us or facilitate us continuing to accept our enslavement.
Right.
And he made that distinction, and he gave us examples with Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, and others, Malcolm X, Nat Turner, excuse me. But I like the example pointed out by Jeramogi on the MOI trip and missionary outreach. For those that may be watching that do not know, was a part of our church program where we went out into foreign communities to do missionary work. And oftentimes we were in enemy territory, as was pointed out in Jeramogi Kimathi's example. Either of you have experiences where maybe you were in a situation where you felt like maybe I'm at my wit's end or this is it, and something occurred that would be on par with a Pentecost experience, a right now Pentecostal experience. And either one of you all can just kind of jump in if you'd like to share.
Okay, I think I have one. Kind of like in school, like college and stuff, when like preparing for midterms and stuff, and how honestly, my first semester I kind of like dropped the ball. I started off really, really strong or whatever. And then, you kind of get that like itis when it comes like the, nearer of the term or whatever. You're trying to get a little lazy, a little lax or whatever. But I had to realize that I came here to do something. I came here to be somebody. I came here. This is my world. This is my reality. And you have to surround yourself with people that's going to motivate you, that's going to build you up. And sometimes you can get a little, I don't know, you can get a little tired of being around people that kind of drains you and that pulls you down and that, doesn't align with who you are. So I guess my Pentecostal experience was like being around a friend who we kind of grew apart in a sense. Like we thought this was going to be our relationship, but it wasn't. It was turned to something that was different. Nothing necessarily, you don't have to have hate or envy or jealousy towards the person, but you have to also surround yourself with people that's going to build you up and encourage you to do better, not make you feel any less than who you are. So I guess that was a Pentecost experience for me, is to, always be grounded, in order to ground it in tradition, from the shrine. I'm born into the nation, so I'm a nation baby. So, you're surrounded by you guys pouring into me. So that's always a reminder for me every time I'm out in different spaces where I'm not, like you said, kind of in enemy territory, where there's people who don't have the same mindset as you, who don't have that experience. So you have to always surround yourself with people that are going to, of course, love you, but also have the best interests. And you just know who you are.
Thank you for that.
In a crisis situation, there's a tendency for things to fall apart, for people to separate. Sometimes when a person gets sick, rather than turning to the community, they tend to isolate themselves, get depressed. But when they listen to the voice of God, cosmic energy, that brings them back to the communal environment, they often find the healing message and inspiration that is needed to move forward and to resolve the issue. For many Black people the world over, the pandemic that we are still concluding, hopefully, has been a experience that has forced the communal people to fly apart for some kind of safety. And it's at those times that we're in a more crisis situation as a communal people. But when we come back together, I had an experience yesterday where in Atlanta, in our Kiva Land Park, groups came together just for a fellowship. And being able to be a part of that experience, to see brothers and sisters who are committed to the liberation of Black people, who are committed to nation building, coming back together. Many who I have not seen in too long of a time, but that coming back together, it seems like the sun shined brighter. The whole experience was just a uplifting energy experience to once again be able to hug those steadfast soldiers. It was just a very inspiring feeling, and one that left with a powerful inspiration that the struggle continues, and we're going to keep moving forward.
Well, as I reflect on your stories, I'm inspired, as I was inspired by the story that Jeramogi Kimathi shared with his experience with missionary outreach. And I had several experiences like that, but also I had an experience when I left Detroit going to grad school in Philadelphia, and at about the age of 36, I just packed up my truck, which was a hoopty truck, I might add, and put some stuff in storage. Now, my pursuit of higher education from undergrad going forward was always to enhance my ability to serve the cause of African liberation. So Newly out of undergrad, I went to Temple University, which was the bastion of Afrocentric research, intellectual inquiry. I went there. I hardly knew anyone there, had very little money. I got to grad school and could not write. My writing was horrible. And I didn't even totally understand what grad school was. In the very first semester, my very first semester there, I contemplated dropping out, packing my truck up again, getting on 76 East, no West, and 80, bringing my little narrow Detroit behind, back to Detroit and going back to what I was doing. And I had two different experiences that helped to invigorate me. I received a copy of Black Christian National. At one point, then I received a copy of the Black Messiah. And what made these things, I was at a point too, I was ready to give up, not necessarily on the struggle, but I felt like this is, I can't do this. This is way beyond me. I'm an old man trying to go back to school, trying to pursue a dream. And what made the experience even special beyond the contents of the book, somebody took both copies of those books, and some of you all may remember the switchboard in the training center. Somebody left those books on the switchboard in the training center and had people sign them with dedications and inspirational words. Actually, it was my wife at the time, and those books were sent to me with words of encouragement from Cardinal Masai, from Fundi Amina, Major Colomo, just different brothers and sisters in the church. And that helped to reinvigorate in me that, and I'll borrow Jeramoji's phrase, that I had to go forward and stay on the path. And it was instances like that, that for me were right now Pentecostal experiences. And even as I watched the sermon today, I kind of reflected on the need to tap into that again. As I said, as an older young person or a younger older person, to endure what it is that we endure for 30, 40 years, it ebbs and flows. Sometimes you're at the top of your game and sometimes you're not. And a sermon like the one today, for me, is a beacon call to go back in and to look at those examples of other Pentecostal experiences, as well as those in my life, to be reinvigorated, to be able to continue in the earthly battles that we're challenged with. Did either one of you maybe want to share some particular aspect of the sermon or example from the sermon that may have, spoke to you more or that stood out?
But one of the things that stood out for me was when Jeramoji mentioned the Sun people, the hunter-gatherers, the African hunter-gatherers, whose DNA represents the oldest human DNA. And the boiling energy ritual that they experience as a communal people to address whatever crisis that might have existed in the community. On yesterday, in our cultural center, we had a virtual history class when we were actually talking about that same culture that dated for over 300,000 years as modern human beings in the hunter-gathering stage, the culture that developed among African people as a communal culture that addressed all the issues that face the people. And how today we have, in many respects, been separated from that communal culture, that belonging to each other, and the need to get back to that experience where all of our issues as a people, if we can just reconnect ourselves to our indigenous spiritual culture, it will provide all solutions for our problems. The main thing is coming back together, pooling our intellect, our hearts, and our spirits to bear on any issue that we can resolve whatever we are faced with. That was very inspirational for me, and that we were just talking about that on the history class on yesterday.
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. To piggyback off of what Walamu spoke about coming back together, and I liked how Jaramogi incorporated the Africans doing a ritual, and how as African spirituality, that's the whole point, is we know that God is cosmic energy and creative intelligence, and how when we do rituals, not only just to commemorate our ancestors, but to also ask, if you seek, you shall find. If you knock on the door, you will get what you will get what you want. So when you put out energy and you ask when you're doing a ritual, then you're seeking something, then you will receive that. So I like that he spoke about that. And also what Walamu mentioned about coming together. And in the now, people may not call it a ritual, but when we come around the circle, when we have those gatherings and we have those fellowships, just to either breathe in or, doing something small as breathe in or breathe out, that's a ritual. That's a form of everybody being together, coming together as a people. So even though we can still incorporate those indigenous practices, we have new things that we do as a community. So that's pretty powerful to make that connection.
Thank you. I'm also reminded that another part of this gathering is those that are viewing us on YouTube. So we like to encourage the participants on YouTube, if you will, to put in the chat what maybe your Pentecostal experience was. Was it a right now Pentecostal experience? Please share that with you. And of course, we will bring it into the conversation here. So we welcome your comments. Another thing that we were constantly reminded of in the sermon is that oftentimes, and in the case with the disciples in the upper room, and maybe with Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, and others, that, quote, things had not worked out the way I expected. And how many times have we been in a situation that things that didn't work out the way that we expected? I can think of a number of examples of being in a situation with missionary outreach where you may go into a town and have plans to do a thing a certain way, or to maybe secure a permit to be able to do your missionary work at a certain location. And for whatever reason, you go into a city hall and the people don't know what the rules are. And if you reach into your own inner divinity and your own creativity, you can flip the script and tell them what has to happen. And instead of you going in and leaving without the permits that you need, because you could speak from an authoritative place, they would acquiesce to what you came in there to get, even though they started out pushing back against you or going to a particular location where you were told maybe that you had permission to be there, and maybe the communication didn't go as it should have on the other people's side. And because you were able to reach within yourself and find a way to make things happen, you were still able to do it. Or perhaps you had a situation where you went to a particular location and something arose where you couldn't be there. Reaching into your own inner divinity, as things did not work out as you planned, when you reach into yourself, you found a way to make it happen. And I'm reminded of one of our now dear ancestors, Bishop Akili, who was from Detroit, he had a saying that he borrowed from, oh man, Hannibal, the great general. And that was find a way or make a way. And to me, that's like a right now response when things had not or did not work out the way that we expected them. But another thing that I think about when I think about this phrase, things had not worked out the way that I expected them, I also think about this idea of we have our being, I'm kind of mixed up on the phrase, but we work and operate within the context of God. Sometimes when things don't work out the way we expected them, it's because we're outside of alignment with God, as opposed to being in alignment, which will help us to be able to respond when things don't work out the way I expect them to. Because I'm doing work that is bigger than me, I'm able to take that, my response, and make it work in a way that's conducive of the work that is essential to us building the nation that we're trying to build. We live, move, and have our total being in God. And I think sometimes when things don't work out the way we expect them to, we outside of that context and maybe operating from our own individual selves. So can you all relate to that? Or does this phrase that things had not worked out the way I expected, do you have experiences that may be comparable to that?
No, definitely. Definitely had those experiences, but also from the sermon what Jermoji spoke about is being open to, being open to receive that energy, receive that new direction instead of, being stuck in ways and kind of, although you're trying to fight out to get out whatever situation that you're in, you have to allow yourself to tap into that creativity that God has bestowed on us, tap into our gifts and let that allow us to, get out those situations. But again, it's inevitable to avoid those situations because we don't know what is going to be thrown at us, but to, again, be grounded in who we are as a people and allow ourselves to be open to receive, the power from God, then that will help us get through anything.
It is an inspirational experience to hear Nkosi talk and share his ideas. It's a Pentecost experience for me, with the understanding that things don't always go the way you planned it. We can plant the seeds in our youth, but sometimes those seeds do not materialize when we want them to materialize. But when we have a youth that comes back to us and express those ideas, having embraced them as his own, that's a very powerful God moment. And we see God as an energy expression. And to have that energy coming from him helps to inspire me to keep on moving forward. And that's what the whole message is basically about. As he indicated, life, you're going to have problems in your life. Don't give up. And to understand that you have divine energy within you, that if you use it in a creative way, you can help to solve problems. And then when you bring that energy together with others, then your power is magnified, and there's nothing that we can't do together. So go forward and stay on the path. Very powerful message.
I'm thinking as I listened to you all talk, I was also a biblical reference comes to mind of when the nation of Israel left Egypt. course, they were eager, dying to get out. They wanted freedom. They wanted to build a nation. And once they got out there and started to face the challenges of the responsibilities of being independent, people start changing their mind and saying, you know, take me back.
Mm.
But there was a segment of the nation at that time that said, we need a right now experience that's going to carry us through. It was a protracted struggle, and ultimately they were successful. Of course, being a younger representative of us in COSI, of course, we want to ask you to encourage our young people to become a part of the struggle we're engaged in. As we opened up, we mentioned that this is a protracted struggle. Right. I mean, our people's captivity in this country has been over almost 300 years. And for us to work ourselves out of this, it takes generation after generation to do their work. So if you could maybe say something with that in that context. And I also would like to, if we can, maybe see if we have any responses from the people that are viewing on YouTube, and maybe we can respond to some of those comments as well.
I agree. But it's also to piggyback off what both you and Walamu said about not only the shrine bestowing on me, but, you know, allowing me to be that example. It's very important to have, you know, I'm honored and I'm blessed that Reverend Leone reached out to me to, you know, have the opportunity to speak on the after talk, because it's something I didn't like necessarily consider myself doing. I was like, well, like, to be totally candid, I was like, well, I don't know. Like, I'm not really prepared, but she just broke it down. So, well, just watch the sermon and all you're doing is just giving your perspective. And I feel like it's important to have somebody different, you know, just show their face. And also, again, since I'm younger, also give my perspective, because I am, you know, I am in tune with who I am. I am, you know, spiritual. So the fact that I'm here being a living testament from what the shrine bestowed on me, what my parents poured into me, what my community has poured into me, it's important to be that representation of the youth, and also allowing those seeds, because those seeds are not done growing. The seeds are still embedded into everyone who's, you know, everyone who walked through the doors of the shrine, who've been touched by someone through the shrine. So allowing those seeds to come on their own, because everybody has their time when a plant, you know, if we compare plants, if we will, you may have started at the same time, but we don't know where our journey is going to, you know, differentiate, where our path is going to differentiate. But at the same time, knowing and loving our brothers and sisters when they do have those Pentecostal experiences and when they do run back to the community. And there's nothing wrong with leaving the community for your own, you know, for whatever you're going through, but knowing that we have a place that we can run back to, where we have our elders, our mothers, our fathers, our Walamus, you know, our pastors, our ministers, that accept us for who we are and accept us that, okay, you had this experience, and now that you want for your own, that you want to help, you know, build this institution. So, yeah.
You know, I'm also reminded that going back to the biblical reference of the nation of Israel, who left Egypt and spent 40 years or so in the wilderness, that part of the prescription or part of the solution was that the older generations essentially were not necessarily going to see the promised land. Many of them had to die out. And for me, as a 64-year-old man who came into this iteration of our struggle at 20, I can remember benchmarks in my life. I mean, at 20, it's like the nation is going to be here by the time I get 25. Then at 25, well, it's going to be here by 35. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, the solace that has been able to keep me going is seeing my life as a part of a huge continuum. So the short, however long I live, is like a drop of water, but it's comparable to the life of Marcus Garvey, of Harriet Tubman, of Jaramogi Abebe Ajiman, of General Masai, because they lived and gave within the context of time that they were allowed, but it was done in a way that is connected to a continuous forward flow of people trying to make life better for ourselves. And I'm reminded of a line from the creed: the revolutionary spirit of God is born anew in each generation. You see, so going back to the nation of Israel, Moses didn't make it to the promised land, but the nation of Israel got there. And this, for me, means that we have to not only be visionaries beyond our own lives, we have to be willing to commit ourselves that's much bigger than what I'm going to get in my lifetime, and commit to our progeny and for the generations to come. Also, I'm reminded of Maya Angelou's poem, I think is I Am the Dream or the Vision of the Slave. And this kind of makes that same point, that where we are and what we're doing today, of course, our ancestors couldn't do a lot of these things, but some of them were committed to doing what needed to be done to get us to where we are. And we are indebted to those that have gone before us and those yet to come. Did anybody else have any closing comments?
I do. I would like to just thank this experience. Thank you guys for, listening and allowing me to be authentic in my thoughts. And it's really, again, now that I have done this, it makes me want to come back and return and, also help facilitate this conversation. Because again, I wasn't thinking I was like, oh, well, I don't know. But now that I've done it, it just feels good to also, not only has the shrine again poured into me, but now I'm pouring myself back into what's one of the pillars and one of the values that, allowed me to become who I am. So again, I thank you guys for this experience.
Amen.
Yeah. In Kosi, I would
Yes.
just like to, I'm not going to say charge you with, I just would like you to consider, you said you want to come back, and I would like to hope that maybe we could have you and maybe some of your peers, maybe within the context of the church and external, to maybe experience one of our virtual village sermons on a Sunday, and it be a particular afterwards that is totally youth oriented, so that we can hear the voices of the younger generation. Because ultimately, and I heard a very interesting comment yesterday. I was at an African Liberation Day event, and we say the children are our future, and the speaker said we need to stop saying that, because our children are not our future. And when I'm using children broadly, not just 1 to 18. Our children are our present, because you are alive now and you're doing things right now. And we need to hear from you. We need to connect to you all. And we need to know. And I know just from people on this call and people that I've been in the struggle with for years, that we have done the work to invest in subsequent generations to continue this work on. So I'm hopeful. I don't want to put it as a charge, because I don't want to come off paternal. But I'm hopeful that we can have a similar conversation that is solely among you.
Yeah, and that's authentic, and that's powerful, because it wouldn't be coming from a place of like, oh, it's monitored, it's censored. But again, this isn't monitored and censored. It's you reflecting, and it'll come good for somebody who, again, is a younger perspective, because we want to hear from everybody. Everybody's voice, needs to be heard. So that would be powerful.
And don't squander your youth, because you're going to look up and you'll be sitting where we're sitting.
I know that's right. Yeah.
Trying to get the voice of your children and younger people. Did you have anything you would like to close out with, Wally Olatunji?
Just to add to what you've already said, to raise a child in the community and then to send them off on an educational pursuit where they may be exposed to different types of ideas, and then to have them come back and you see that they are still grounded in the culture, of our community. That's an inspiring thing for us. We want you to know that it's a right now Pentecostal experience for us to have you here. Continue to do what you're doing, brother. We appreciate you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you both so much for being here on this Pentecostal Sunday on May the 28th, 2023. We thank you so much. And we'd like to urge our audiences, as you view this, whether it's in real time or later, that you like and share broadly. And we invite you to continue to be a part of these conversations and the presentations of the Shrine of the Black Madonna live streaming every Sunday at 11:30 a.m., 11:38 Eastern Standard Time. And we also, as we depart, pray and urge and hope that as you face yourself at a challenge or at a time where things don't work out as you expect them to, that you look to our history, look to our past, call on our ancestors, and most importantly, turn to our Creator for a right now Pentecostal experience. We hope that you continue to protect yourselves and be safe. And we close with our words